Well, welcome everybody to Midweek Conversation. This is episode 6. We've already knocked 5 out, which is crazy. But this is all about us adding as much value as we can to our amazing community. You guys have been sending us awesome questions and topics that you're curious about. And we really just want to use this avenue to communicate in a way that hopefully builds you and your families up in a good and right way. And we've already tackled some pretty big topics. We've had a lot of fun with it. I've learned along the way.
A lot. Yeah, just through conversation, it's been really helpful for me just to talk through it.
Yeah, it's been great. And today we have a really special episode. For those who are watching this, you can tell we have some guests with us. So we have Steve and Crystal Thacker with us today for you and I, Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
And we're excited to talk to you guys. How you feeling?
Hey, I will say this. I want to thank you guys for doing this. It's not something that I've ever aspired or never thought we'd ever be doing. But I want to thank you guys for doing this because these first 5, I've already learned and grown through these first 5. And I know it's a lot of work to kind of put all this together, but thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that. That's great feedback. We're really happy to have you guys with us because really, we're just treating this as like a family conversation, like we're in the living room hanging out, talking about things. And so I'm excited about it.
Only thing's missing is some steak, chicken,
some,
food,
meaning a whole load of it.
Full.
Yeah. So today is a big topic. You guys have sent us a lot of questions about the topic of parenting. What does it look like to be a godly parent?
Yep.
What does it look like to be a father or a mother that points people to Jesus? I mean, huge stuff, right? These are our precious little things, right?
Yeah, it's every day.
Yeah. And so we want to just open up some good, lively conversation about it. I do want to say from the beginning, none of us are child psychologists. We're not trained professionals in this arena. So we don't want to come off like we have all the answers here. We just want to have an open conversation about it and see what you guys can learn in the process. So I wanted to make that clear from the beginning. But at the same time, I think you two in particular are subjects that we want to talk to about this topic. I think you are highly revered when it comes to parenting, and for good reason. And so I think hopefully we'll get a lot of value out of this.
Yeah, we have some things to talk about now.
Yeah. Good luck. All right, well, let's jump in. All right. So I mentioned we're talking about godly parenting. I want to just start kind of high level, more vague. When you think of what it means to be a godly parent, I'm curious maybe like what's the first thing that comes to your mind or your heart, whether it's a word, a concept, whatever it is, like just what's the first thing that comes through your head when I say that?
I think when I first hear that phrase, I just want to raise a good person. But then that could be deciphered many different ways, right? Depending on who you're talking to. But what are the attributes of God, and how can I instill those attributes into this precious little gift that God has just given us?
Yeah, that's great. Dad?
I'm just being transparent here. I don't think I was as intentional as I should have been back then. But so we just lived life, and we just, kind of went through life. And part of our life was, and I'll just give kudos to my mom and dad. I followed after what they did for me, which was we went to church. You guys went everywhere we went, and we were oftentimes at church. And so just raising you guys around the Word of God, around prayer, around people also that are loving God and following after God, was what we ended up doing.
Yeah, your habits and rhythms and showing your kids what that looks like is huge. You mentioned your parents, and so I know you guys would both give a lot of credit to how you were raised.
Absolutely.
So as a child in those different environments, I'm curious what you learned about what it means to be a good parent from your mother and your father.
Yeah, I will say that earlier this morning when I was thinking that we were going to get together and talk, that anything I did right as a mom, I owe to my mom. She just lived a good, steady, godly life, and that's all I knew. So, so you can thank Grammy for
Thank you.
anything I did right. But yeah, I was so blessed to be raised in a godly home, and both of my parents, they weren't in the ministry as far as a pastor or whatever, but they were always involved in leadership in a very humble way, I would say. Dad was a youth leader. He was, played in the orchestra. Mom always sang with him, and then was a Sunday school teacher. But anyway, just that life of servanthood was just something we lived with on a daily basis. And that's, I feel like, how they raised their children. And so as a result, I feel like as my examples, that's how I tried to raise my children.
Yeah. Servant leadership, we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that was paved in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned in a prior episode, it's just like, that's what we did. That's who we are. Like, that wasn't something we really felt like we had to learn. It was just like from the get, this is what we do. And so I'm very grateful for that, because to have to learn that more so as an adult, that would be a lot more challenging than what you just are raised up in. And that we can apply that a lot of different ways in this conversation I'm sure we're going to go into, but I know I'm appreciative of that.
How about you?
Just kind of looking back on it, it was God-centered. I mean, like, everything that we were doing was centered around, I say God-centered, but around serving God, around, maybe it wasn't always the relationship with God all the time. Like, we didn't, sad to say, we didn't like pray before we went to bed at night, all those types of things. But man, we were at church 5 times a week. And so all of what encompasses that, I mean, prayer, of course, and just serving and being a part of it, everything, it was God-centered. And I'll say another big thing was respect. I think respect was something that was in hard work, work ethic and things like that. That's, I think, I'll say big things that came out of it.
When you say the word respect, I'm curious what exactly you mean by that.
Like, I'll just use examples, so our principal lived 3 doors down from us, the principal of our elementary school. And I knew that he was our neighbor. He was 3 doors down. And if there was ever anything that I did, it was going to be, Mom and Dad would know about it. And Dad would always say, hey, and back then they used to paddle you in the principal's office. And by the way, I got 0 paddles as a child.
Congrats.
But here's the reason why, I think, is because Dad said, hey, you get a paddle from the principal, be prepared for another one when you get home. He was that way. He said, if you disrespect a teacher, we didn't even have to talk about police officers. That was just a given. But anybody of authority, another parent or anybody like that, there was a price to pay if you were disrespectful to somebody like that.
And I'm just curious, as the child in that equation, do you feel like that was done in a healthy way? Or were there aspects of it that leaned into maybe unhealthy?
I would say it was done in a completely healthy way. It definitely made me fear, as a child, feared my father's discipline, which I think at that age was healthy. Obviously, as an adult, I didn't want to have to fear my father, which I didn't. We'll talk about that later, but maybe a balance there. But in terms of phases of life, but man, no, he made sure in a good, healthy way that I understood what it meant if I was going to be disrespectful to somebody.
I appreciate this because as a dad myself, I'm going off of all that I know from my upbringing. And as a father of kids, I'm like, trying to meld that with like Jesus and the teachings that, we read about there. And so talking about just respect, a lot of the things that, I'm pondering as a dad is, just how I am fathering my kids, and that as I'm trying to discipline them, instruct them, guide them, teach them, that I'm doing that from a place of like love and desire for them to grow into someone, that's Christ following, right? And it's not coming from a place of me being domineering, because, a lot of like the teachings we read about in the Bible is not about like a power play or like a dominating posture coming from that place, but it coming from a place of that it's not easy. We need guidance and structure, and we need discipline, but it's being done. I'm doing it from a place of not dominating, but guiding and parenting and discipling them toward Jesus ultimately. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. No, I love how you're thinking there. And my first thought was, Jesus told us the greatest commandment, right, is to love the Lord our God and to love people. So that being said, how can I parent these children then to look at this as the biggest commandment that they are supposed to live?
Yeah.
So what does that look like to love God and love people? Well, if they're going to love people well, I have to teach them not to lie, not to steal, not, all the things that goes into really loving
That's good.
people. And respect is the beginning of what? Wisdom, or whatever, the wisdom of God. And I think when the Bible talks about fear God, it really means respect God, right? You respect God so much, but I do feel like sometimes those two words go hand in hand, really closer than what initially we think. That sounds almost like contrary to one another, but when you think about it, especially as a child, you learn respect through fear a lot. You learn to respect the hot stove because if you touch it, it's going to burn you. So you start fearing that hot stove, and that teaches you to respect, the hot stove. There's a lot that goes in our minds as parents, as how can I parent healthy, but yet my ultimate goal is to raise these children to be God-fearing adults. Yeah. So they may be 2 right now, but what can I do right now to make them a God-fearing, healthy, respectable 30-year-old?
Yeah. I like the direction we're going. So when it comes to being a godly parent, and like when I say godly parent, I think about a parent that reflects God, right? What are some of the primary characteristics that you feel like come with that? Be it the values that you have, the type of person, how you treat a child, whatever it might be. What are some of the primary characteristics that come to mind?
I'll start with, first and foremost, is love, and demonstrating love. Now, the demonstration of love as a small child is going to look different. In the very beginning, you're talking about, out of love, you're protecting that child. As a small child, they can't protect themselves. There's not something that they're not old enough to be able to do that. And I don't know what that age is. All parents will know that time frame. But the bottom line is, and you never stop wanting to protect them, but there's also a time when they become able to start protecting themselves a little bit. I think, and you guys were hitting on it, that whole fear thing. It's okay as long as out of love, and that's so important. Do what you have to do out of love to train your child, to protect your child. I always use the example with you guys. Listen, I want you guys to hear what I'm telling you, to listen to what I'm saying, because you could be on the side of the street, ready to walk off into the street. A car's heading your way, and you're not seeing it, but Daddy sees it. And I tell you no, or stop, or whatever it is. And I don't want to have to go have you say why, or go into an explanation. I need you to stop. So at that particular age, there's a difference. It's a difference. It's like, they can't think for themselves exactly at that age. And so you need them to, out of fear even sometimes, to be protected, listen to you.
Yeah, I do. I don't know. For me, whenever we say the word fear, I think respect is what we're talking about, right? I don't think we should be thinking that they should be afraid of us, but that they should have reverence and respect.
Sure.
And that's what the Hebrew word fear means,
right,
which is the beginning of wisdom. So I want to make certain that we draw lines of distinction there, because unfortunately we have seen a culture of parents who abuse their children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who, out of power tactics and being domineering, that's not right.
Yeah.
That is not reflecting God in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So I want to make certain
Sure.
that we're clear there. I think one of the things for me that I am thinking a lot about now, my kids are 6 and 3, and especially for my 3-year-old boy, who's got a lot of personality and a lot of energy. I am thinking a lot about how can I make sure that there's structure, that he understands right and wrong, and that he understands respect and reverence. And yet at the same time that I don't have to break him, that I don't have to break him of his curiosities, that I don't have to break him of his good energy. That's something I'm thinking a lot about. Do you guys feel like you ever hit a good balance of being able to do that?
Well, I think honestly, you two were really easy kids.
Oh, stop it.
I know you don't want to hear it, but I think looking at
Absolutely.
kids as a whole, just your personalities were very easy. Like I could just look at you and get on to you, and you were so repentant. You were a little.
Let's move on.
Yeah, no, lean in.
But honestly, I feel like you two were really easygoing, laid back. You weren't the wild, crazy, kids. So I think it was just kind of easy. We could just kind of tell you or show you, and even if we had to smack a hand or whatever, it was not like something we had to do much, because you learned what you needed to do and just did it. So I can't say that either one of you really had the personality of a Roman or a Knox. You were typical little boys that played a lot in sports and cars and all of that. But I don't think you really had a strong will, like we had to break or not break or whatever. Dad, you want to?
My thought on that is you shouldn't be as concerned about breaking the will as a number one priority. Your number one priority as a parent is to love and to protect that child at that age. Don't get me wrong. As much as we love you guys, as much as you love your children, you never want to break their will or break their, who they're going to be. But as an importance, I'd rather have you here and alive today than be as concerned about, where you're going to be in 30 years or 20 years or whatever. I'm just telling you this was sort of my thought process behind it. First of all, first and foremost, love. Everything in every way of discipline or every way of doing anything with your children, it has to come from love. Even if it doesn't look like love to them at 4 years old or 5 years old.
Yeah, I was thinking, I kind of mentioned like the parent perspective of like dominating, or posturing in that kind of way. And you mentioned earlier, at 2 years old, they might be 2 right now, but they're going to be an adult. And that's something that I've been pondering as well, is like, it's very easy to look down at a child, your child. Well, they're only 2 years old, and I can, they just need to listen to me, because by golly, I am who I am, versus like, they are a child of God, made in the image of God. And again, I'm guiding them towards that.
I think also, if you realize that they're first and foremost his child and his creation, I think that gives you more of a stewardship mindset, as opposed to, well, this is mine, I can do whatever I want with this. No, this, they're God's. And I'm supposed to steward wisely what he is entrusting me with, which is, geez Louise.
Yes.
The level of responsibility of that is overwhelming.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Yeah.
So we're talking a little bit about discipline, which I think is a common topic in our culture today, because, there are so many different forms of discipline, and yet at the same time, not breaking a child's will. So I think one of the balances that all parents are trying to achieve is, how do you garner respect, and how do you discipline, because discipline is necessary, while also not separating relationally the bond and the intimacy that ought to be there between parent and child. What are some of the lessons you guys have learned from that standpoint?
I am thinking back to a young lady that was in our youth group that had come from an abusive home, and she lived with us for a while when you boys were little. And I don't remember which one, but one of you got in trouble, and I had disciplinages, and she she came in, because after I got down on the floor and loved on you and explained, now you understand, Mama did this because I told you not to, or whatever the case was. I don't remember. But she came in crying and said, I have never seen a child disciplined in love. And even today, now that she's got her own kids and all, every once in a while she'll mention that made such an impression on her. And I think, again, Dad mentioned this, but everything we do has to be in love. It's a huge responsibility God is entrusting us with when he gives us these babies. And he is trusting us to raise them in the fear of him. They are created for a reason. He has a plan for their life, just like you told Jeremiah. I knew you before you were born. I've had a plan for you. And now, then he handed Jeremiah to his mother and father and said, here, I have a plan. Now make it happen. Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel sometimes, if we really think about the enormity of what it means to be a parent.
Yeah, that's really good.
So for me, this is an area where I definitely failed. I feel, as a parent, again, being sort of like not being intentional. I treated you both the same as small children. I treated you both the same. You actually, to be honest with you, I thought your temperament and everything else was very similar growing up as small children. But I wasn't looking for the times when Dustin distinguished himself differently or had different behaviors than Devin. I wasn't looking for that, because they were the same all the way growing up. And it kind of hit me, later, I thought I really messed it up with Dustin, that relationship perspective. I thought I really messed it up. There is a time when, and this is, I think, depending on the child. So not, again, going back to my point, you can't do it the same for every child.
Yeah, it's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
No.
And I think I was able to maneuver this with you, Devin, and transition with you I'm going to call it a later time in life. Like I remember driving. You were driving, and I was riding in the car with you, and you were driving. And I remember talking to you about trust. and we had a good conversation. It wasn't me as a dad just going like after you, you know. It was a conversation we were having, and I was explaining things to you, and we were talking about it, and you were sharing back and so forth. But then, you know, I thought, well, I'm just going to do the same thing with Dustin at the same timing or whatever. But I needed to do it sooner with him, and just because it was a different situation. And I then started, you know, really too late with you, and we had kind of like I'll call it a disagreement just to kind of, but at that point in time, I felt like I hadn't transitioned the way it needed to transition like I had with you. I hadn't transitioned with you sooner. And as a result, you were already an adult. You were already thinking in these particular ways, I believe anyway. And I was on the other end going, man, I just messed that up really bad. And I can tell you, it was a devastating thing for me. I drove home and told Crystal, crying, I was upset. I was very upset that I think I've lost him. And there is an importance. You guys are hitting on a topic that is extremely important. There's a time that you have to, you know, transition from being that protective parent to where, hey, I've gotten them to a point where they're thinking on their own, and now, hey, let's build some relationship to the point where, hey, it's gonna last. You're not gonna always be, you know, when it wouldn't be right for me to be treating you guys the way I did when you were younger.
You mentioned there being differences in when they're young versus when they're getting older. And Tara and I read a book that was really helpful for me about like different stages of your kids and therefore how you should parent your kids. And so when they're really young, it's disciplining them in a way that's saying right from wrong. It's basic, just right from wrong. And then from 6 to 12, like in that range, they are now growing up a little bit more, starting to step into their personalities more, learning more. And now we're like training them to understand why those are right and wrong, right? So we go from just right and wrong to now, why are these things right and wrong? To then like those teenage years, 13 to 17, 18, it's more of like a coaching stage where you're starting to take a step back a little bit. And I'm feeling this with Indy right now, where I'm feeling that like she's stepping into her own, but I'm still here and I'm still coaching and I'm still supporting and I'm still guiding, but it's a little looser to then 18 plus adulthood is where it's like relationship, it's friendship. So like I read this in a book. You guys have lived it. Does all of that make sense to you? Would you add, take away from any of that?
First of all, I will say we had boys and not girls. So I think that is a huge difference. And I'm not sure at that point if you step back or they're pushing you back, honestly, because all of a sudden their peers may have more to say in their lives, you know, and are kind of taking your place in certain things. But yeah, there's definitely a difference through the teen years, and you want to keep them close, but not overstep, because I feel like that's where a lot of parents do lose the timing of developing or transitioning, whatever the word is, into a good, healthy adult relationship with your child. So you have to be there. You still have to be very present, but kind of let them maybe lead a little more than what you have to that point. And I don't know if this is a good place to say it or not, but all along I've been thinking, I think it's really important as a parent to enjoy every season. Now, certain seasons are going to automatically be more enjoyable, but I think now looking back from this end, every season there's something really fun or enjoyable. So I think it's really important to enjoy this gift called a baby, a child that God has given you. So don't forget to enjoy that.
parenting for me has been, I think, already the most humbling experience of my life. And my kids are still so very young. But I've never been in a situation before where so often I walk away from something thinking to myself, did I do that right? Did I approach that right? Because it's such a precious thing to me. And it is such an honor as well. And so with that being said, Dad, you've already gotten into this a little bit, but I'd be curious if you guys would be willing to get vulnerable and just maybe talk through some of those moments throughout your experience where huge lessons learned, you felt like you got it wrong, any of that might help people be able to walk in a more clear manner.
I do feel like looking back, they always ask you, do you regret anything or whatever? I do feel like there was one or two times I really remember that I disciplined in anger because I got upset. And looking back, I wish I would have maintained my composure, and disciplined in the right manner. Luckily, I can't say it happened a lot, but I do specifically remember a time or two that I just
remember
wish.
a couple of those times.
Yeah, us too.
I do, yeah. Yeah, and the times when I did it out of frustration, that was wrong. That was just wrong. Because I did it like to satisfy that emotion I was feeling as opposed to really guiding and teaching and training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I kind of alluded this earlier, and that is, I think there are times, and I know that there are times because we've had conversations about this before, especially about discipline. Like, you guys, I know you were upset, Dad. I know you were mad. I know, and that's where I was kind of going with before is like, everything that you do, you must do out of love. And if that means making you guys think that if the next time you do or step aside and do the wrong thing, that I have to convince you in a way that makes you think not to do that ever again, I'm going to do it. As a parent, now I don't mean hurt you. Mm-hmm. I mean like abuse you. I mean like make you think, like bluff, make you think that the next time's not going to be so good, And so there were times I know that when you guys look back, in fact, you've said it and we've had conversations about it. And Dad, now you weren't mad at all during that time? And I'm like, no, I literally was not mad. I can honestly, that's one thing I can look back and say, I never disciplined you out of anger. Not one single time have I ever disciplined you guys out of anger or even frustration. I always felt like I wanted to make sure to change the behavior. I wanted to help you learn. I wanted to help you grow. I wanted to help you never to do that, whatever that was again, or to take it, because I knew that at this age was not a big deal, but to step aside a little older in age could take you down paths that would be terrible for you. And so I wanted you to really believe Dad was serious about it. And I can honestly, truthfully, before God, I can say I never did anything other than out of love.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little real, and this is why I struggle with this topic a lot. Of what's the line? What's the good and right line? I think for me, your approach with that was a detriment to my relationship with you.
I agree.
Because in retrospect, you didn't discipline me very often, but I grew up deathly afraid of you. You made me feel unsafe around you. And as I got older, that pushed me away from you. I didn't want to be around you because I was scared of you. And so whether you were doing it out of anger or not, the way that you made me feel pushed me away. And it makes me scared with my kids because I know how amazing of a father you were. And yet for a long time there, it was destructive to my relationship with you. And it scares me to death that I will make my kids feel that way to where they will not want to be around me or to be safe in my presence.
So first of all, as a parent, that's never what you want to hear. And I appreciate you sharing that. As a parent, it's never what you want to hear. But the other flip side of that would be, of course, I never wanted you. And that ties back to what we were talking about, what I was talking about before, that timing of every child's different, and be able to transition that discipline versus relationship at the proper time. And so had I known that that's the way you felt, like literally that's the way you felt, I would have changed a lot earlier. I had no idea that was what was going through your mind, as a young child even, I don't know how old that started, but, or, when that should have started changing is what I mean. But that should never happen. And I apologize to you for that. That's not something that I would have ever wanted to turn out. But the other side of that coin is I would have been so regretful, much more regretful, had you stepped into something that was a catastrophe or something that was very, very bad. I know people that have taken drugs just one time and it's ruined their lives for the rest of their lives, or something along those lines. Just an accident in a car or something like that you were messing around and you weren't listening to pops or whatever, and so I was more making sure that stuff like that would never ever happen to my sons. And so I was maybe now I know way over the top with that, or needed to pay closer attention to the timing of when that transition, that relationship happened, because I know that all of us here as parents would never want their child to fear them to that degree, and that's a horrible feeling.
Well, it's something I've thought a lot about, because to your point, like, if you hadn't taken that approach, would I have made decisions that would have been destructive for my life? And so maybe that was necessary for me and for those seasons. I'm hopeful that for my children, like, I can somehow strike perfectly in the middle, which I know is not realistic, but it's something I think a lot about.
Yeah, I'm beyond grateful. It's one of my common prayers to God is the upbringing that I had. Like I've shared that with you guys directly. And I think just like you guys did, I'm sure, you take what you experience and you try to stack it up to what do I believe, I should be doing for my kids. And so, yeah, I mean, I've thought about that as well. And for me, I think so much of who we are to be as Christ followers is relational. I mean, it's about people. Like so much of it is people, and certainly starting in our household with our kids. And so for me, from the beginning, there is an underlying relationship that I want to maintain, and that relationship goes from beginning to end, and we're both going toward Him, right? So even in those young ages, through the lens of discipline and instruction, that there's still an underlying relationship that I want to sustain for the long haul.
You keep saying relationship, and again, that is what it's all about. Jesus said, relationship with God, relationship with people. So again, how do we raise these little people to have a relationship, with mom and dad, but also with God and with people? Yeah, it's not an easy task to be a parent, for sure. And then also, we just do the best we can. Nobody sets us down when we have kids and says, okay, this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You do this and then this and this. And so we're just doing the best we can with what we know.
Yeah.
And we look at our own homes and like, oh, I really liked how mom and dad did that, or whatever. I don't think I'll be doing that. But, you know, and then I think with each generation, things kind of change a little bit. And so then you've got a whole new,
perspective.
Yeah. because even looking back when I thought my dad was really rough on something, again, now I understand what he was doing was trying to protect his 5 kids, you know. But at the time when you're the kid, it's like, whoo, you know, that seems kind of strict or whatever the case may be. So
I think that's one of the unfair things about life is you have kids and then you have so much more grace and understanding for your parents, you know, the good and the bad. And like, I feel like that's one of the things that I'm going to carry a lot of regret that I let things get in the way of our relationship that now I understand so much better. And I've wasted a lot of time that I can't get back. And it already breaks my heart.
I'll tell you, what's amazing about both of you is your wisdom and how quickly you get, like, you've gone through phases that are like way faster than at least I did. And so your wisdom and understanding is happening faster than it did for me. And so, like, things like you're processing right now are things that, you know, I didn't process until it was too late. It was way past it. But now you have the opportunity to grow and learn and use those for your children, and to make sure that your children, you know, are you're using these tools and things that you're learning through this process. Because I can tell you right now, I mean, my mom and dad have been gone, you know, now for years. And I look back now, even on some of the things that they did that I never agreed with. And now I'm going, wow, I kind of, you know, now I can relate to that. So I'm still growing, even though they're not even here anymore. And so, and appreciating and things like that. Yeah.
Well, I've always said, and I mean this from my heart, you know, if I'm half the parents that you guys were to me, then I've done a pretty good job. And I mean that sincerely. I very, very much respect you guys. Looking back, probably being in the middle of it right now and understanding how hard this parenting thing is, you know, it's only put that much more respect in place for you guys, what you did, my experience growing up. And like I said, it's one of the things that I'm most thankful for is that God blessed me, graced me, gave me the gift of being born into this world, which is completely out of my control, but being born into your hands. I got to call you mom and dad. And much of who I am today is because of how you raised me, how you nurtured me. So I'm forever grateful that you guys and all the ups and downs and, you know, all of our upbringing, I'm extremely grateful for.
Well, I can tell you, and this is what I've said from the get-go, you know, when you guys were born, I'll never forget telling people, like at work or whoever it was, I'd say, it was the biggest, most pleasant surprise of my life. Again, I live this life so unintentional. That's one of the things that this podcast to me is about, is helping us be more intentional about, you know, with parenting and so forth. But it was the most most pleasant surprise of my life to have you boys. And what I tell everybody this, it's like, it was so incredible, like every parent feels when they have their children. But then for us, it kept getting better. And it kept getting better. And it kept getting better. And people are complaining at work about, oh, my kid's a teenager now, and they're going through this and they're going through that. And I'm going, I tell them the same story. For me, it just keeps getting better.
No doubt. And it's not over. And I know we lost your dad quite young, but God has graced us with being able to still live life together, still grow our relationships together. Yeah, it's just incredible. Having children is something I always wanted. And it is by far, besides being filled with the Holy Spirit, the gift of the Holy Spirit, it is by far the best gift
Amen
God
to that.
can
That's for
give
sure.
anyone.
Yeah. I think for me, you can go in so many different directions with what it means to be a parent. But the thing I've thought about most is that I am to reflect my Heavenly Father as an earthly father, so that whatever my kids see in me, they're ultimately going to grow to correlate to Him, which is so unbelievably humbling. But I want to just say that you guys did that better than I've ever seen. You guys reflected, both of you, the character and the nature of God in such a beautiful way that I think about as an adult. You talked about being intentional. And, I wish I could sit here and say that every good thing in my life I've just been intentional about learning. It is because of the way that you guys lived that I now get to just freely walk in the ways of Jesus, because that's what you lived out in front of me. And I don't often have to think twice about it. So that's the best compliment that I can give anybody. And I proudly give that to you guys.
All right, it's that time. It's the time for the fun segment.
All right.
So we've got family fun that we're going to be jumping into. I think that's very fitting.
Yeah.
Give a little insight of some of our upbringing and experiences together. So I just think we should do something about us specifically. So what would be like fun memories that stand out to you, some of your favorite that might jump to mind? So be thinking on that, but involving the whole family. So we'll just do like a couple rounds. Dad, maybe start us, and we'll just go around the table and do a couple rounds of it. So let's just, what do you got? What's a
Favorite
standout memory?
There's so many that it's hard to come up with a favorite, but just something that stands out to me. I remember when Devin was just a little guy, and there was this, I don't even know what the name of it was, but it was a hockey game. And
Blades of Steel.
and he played it and played it and played it and played it and played it. And it was like almost all he did was play this hockey game. And one day he asked for Dad to come in and play. And I'm not a gamer. I never have been into that. It just wasn't something I did. And, he was, I don't know how old you were. You probably, 6 or 7 or something. And so he asked Dad to come in and play. And, typical dads would just make sure their child would win.
Yeah.
But you're not typical.
But I did not know how to play the game very well. But I ended up beating you, and I'll never forget. how serious and how upset you were whenever Pops beat you after you played or whatever. And I was trying. It was actually a good opportunity to teach you a little bit of a lesson.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. It's one of my least favorite memories. So,
but since I talked about a memory about that, about you at that age, I'll never forget the time when Dustin was just a little guy, and we kept telling him not to turn the lights off. And he would pull up a chair, and he was bare naked, man. And we got him on video, by the way, on this. And he would pull the chair up, and he would flip off the light. And when he flipped off the light, Dad would say, "Dustin, I told you to stop doing that," or whatever. And he'd jump down off that thing, and he'd go run around the house, and I got chasing him around the house, and he was all naked. And I got him on video this whole time, so I'll share that with everybody.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, one of the things that I was thinking that looking back is hilarious. I'm not sure I was laughing really hard then, but when we first moved to Cottleville area from Florissant, so we moved into a 2-story house, and Dustin had a water bed. So we got the water going into the bed, and then we all got busy doing something else. And when we realized, we went up, and it was just like a huge bubble. It hadn't burst, thank God.
Yeah.
But that was hilarious to me anyway.
And I assume you were responsible for having to drain that thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Real hilarious to you. Okay. The first thing that comes to my mind, actually, we were older at this point, but I was still living at the house. Devin, you were married and off on your own, but Cardinals were in the World Series.
Oh, my gosh.
Unbelievable playoff run. And we got together 2011, Game 6, just the family watching at the house. And Cardinals, it was a crazy game and got going, and they were losing and didn't seem like there was much hope. So Devin bails on us.
Yeah. I had littles, man.
Yeah,
Come
whatever.
on, dude.
He quits on us. He goes home, and Mom went to bed, just Dad and I watching the game, and we just, had no hope at all. David Freese gets up, of course, famously in the 9th inning, 2 outs, 2 strikes on him, hits a triple to right field. And we were going crazy, screaming. Mom comes running in like, "What happened? What happened?" And so we called Devin. By the time I get a hold of Devin, it's the 10th inning now. And as I'm talking to him, Josh Hamilton hits a 2-run home run. So we're like, well, never mind.
That was neat.
Yeah. Cardinals tie it back up, right? We get, I think, into the 11th inning, right? And Cardinals tie ball game. David Freese comes up, hits a walk-off home run. And me and Dad stood up, and I took off running, and I jumped right into his arms. He was just holding me. We were going crazy. That's a memory I'll
That
hold
is a
forever.
great memory for me too. And the reason why is because you guys had given up on them, and I never thought I'd ever see any time in life where you two had given up on the Cardinals. But you were paying attention, but you were just like, you were bummed, I think. And then all of a sudden, as the game got closer, especially right at the end there, your face, and we had this big old television that was right above the fireplace. Your face was this close to the television. And as soon as he hit that home run, you come running over to me. And when you ran over to me, like you took your body and you flipped it up to where it was like a baby carrying my arms, and I fell back into the couch with you in my arms. That was so cool. I enjoyed that.
Still the best baseball game I've ever seen in my life.
For sure.
Man,
Unbelievable.
Unreal.
It was really unreal for you.
Yeah. Moving on. So, I would probably go to a childhood vacation. Like we were going to Florida there for years. I don't even remember how many, but we used to play wiffle ball outside a ton out by the beach. And we used to go to the, I guess, mall where we went to the arcade. And I don't know why, but this stands out to me. We played so much skee ball. We were like determined to like break records or something. And I don't know how many games of skee ball we played. But I remember just like the competitive part of me, just like, we got to beat this, and we just kept going and going and going. So I just remember like all four of us like rooting on to, we're gonna beat this. That just stands out to me.
I remember Yankees, Padres in the World Series on one of those vacations. I remember you and I reenacting that and wiffle ball out in the sand. Yeah, it's great memories.
Yeah.
Well, keeping the same theme about sports or whatever, I'll say one of the coolest things and memories for me is, as a dad, I love sports a lot. I know, to the chagrin of my wife, and then of course you guys came along, and that's all you did was sports. You for goodness sakes, you fell asleep to ESPN. But one of the coolest things experience for me, was whenever you guys got old enough to where we could play on the same softball team together and just, have a good time. And I'll never forget, Devin was playing, was it left center or something? And somebody in left field, anyway, they hit the ball out there, and somebody in left field said that there was plenty of room.
Keep going.
Get the ball. And Devin goes and Max smashes that fence, and so I'm like, all three of us were gamers, so I'm like, let's go, and he's acting like he's hurt. And so so I said, are you able to play, finish out the game? And he goes, yeah, I'm ready to go. So we finished out the whole game and ended up taking him to the hospital afterwards to check and see if he had a concussion.
Yeah, stitches, right?
And he had
Stitched up his face.
yeah.
But at least you finished the game.
Yeah, we
That
finished
was
the
main
game.
thing.
That was the
Yeah.
important thing.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing that I was thinking of is when the Thackers would all go, when you kids were little, we'd all go every year to the Lake of the Ozarks. And Uncle Stan and Aunt Renee had a house this particular time I'm thinking about. And we would all just get out and go swimming and everything. But right across the cove from Uncle Stan and Aunt Renee's house was this huge ladder. And then there was a diving board off of it. And you kids had so much fun on that thing. And we were all just laughing and just watching you do your silly things and play football and everything that you were doing. But those are some really amazing memories for me.
Wasn't that the time when you guys were like throwing a football as you're jumping off, and then before you'd hit the ground, the water, you'd throw it to the next person, and then the next
They had
person,
to do that,
the next person?
Yeah. We made up so many games.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are. If we could go do that right
Oh,
now,
God.
we would.
Yeah, 100%.
The last one for me, I was just thinking about Christmases. Christmas has always been such like a special time for me, and because as a kid, you guys made it so special for us. And man, I don't know that I was ever more excited as a kid than on Christmas morning, like running out into the living room and seeing whatever gifts were going to be there. I remember one Christmas in particular when you got me a new bike, Dyno VFR. I remember running out and seeing that and going crazy. And just Christmases, all of them were so special. It's a time that I automatically feel so much joy because of what we got to experience.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. I think I just go back to another vacation time. A lot of memories, I guess, through vacation. But from the beach to the slopes, the skiing vacations, we started those later on, a little later on. But man, I just fell in love with those trips, going skiing, learning how to ski. At first, we were just like flying down the slopes, which was fun. And then we really learned how to ski. Even just like the nighttime in the cabin, lodge deals, a lot of times we'd have like a bigger lodge where the whole family, including like grandma and granddad would stay with us. But one night, you and I were watching some Jim Carrey movie, and there was a part that threw us off. It was late. We were probably slap happy stages, and we could not stop laughing. We're like trying to be quiet. We're crying because we're laughing so hard, and just hearing Dad up in the like loft area, like, boys, we can't go to sleep up here.
Knock
Be
it off.
quiet.
Yeah.
But just those times when you can't even control it, it was fun times.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in again. Episode 6 is in the books.
Yes.
Loved the conversation. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It was a blast.
It was fun.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
We want to encourage you to subscribe, put on your notifications, make sure you know when all of these things are coming out again. We're just trying to add value as much as we can.
Yeah, and with that being said, the more that hear it, the better. So please share it. Continue to pass along word of mouth, because we're hearing some great feedback, which is amazing, and we just want it in as many hands as possible. So thank you guys so much. We love you so much. Make sure to keep an eye out for the next episode.
Yep.
We'll see you guys later.
We'll catch you next time. Love you.